Since leaving the ADF, Russell has established Voice of a Veteran, a platform which advocates for ex-servicemen and women's needs and concerns. Heston, thanks very much for your time today. The warning we heard was pretty stark from the PM. We think of ourselves in Australia as a very positive impact. In the world, a lot of people have a lot of pride in our Army and Special Forces. This could be a bit of a shock to the national psyche.
G'day, Tom. Thanks for having me. Yes, well, I mean, the investigation has been going on for 4.5 years now, and it's commendable that the Prime Minister is really reinforcing the gravity of this situation, but also so important that he is speaking out and saying that this only concerns such a small element of the Special Forces members involved. And I look forward to the Chief of Defence Force coming forward as our senior leader next week to really reinforce that, as I know that there's less than 20 members currently involved with this inquiry. And at the moment, the entire Special Forces is being tarred with the brush that was last refreshed in 2016 before the public opinion.
So talk us through that and the impact then on, I suppose, broadly the Defence Force and ex-defence, but Special Forces in particular. There's been this pretty long-running investigation. At this stage, there's a bit of a cloud that hovers generally, and the impact that's having on you and others.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the investigation itself has been going on for 4.5 years, and we've just been told that now it is going to go to a special investigator. And I myself, who have been involved with the Brereton inquiry, have given evidence twice over the last 2 years, and can currently have questions ongoing with the AFP. Finding out at the same time as the public that the AFP is no longer conducting the investigation, there's going to be a special investigator. And this comes 2 days after receiving a letter myself from the Inspector General of the Defence Force saying that the Brereton inquiry is over, but I'm still not allowed to discuss it with anyone. So if we want a very quick example of the current uncertainty that is being thrust upon our veteran community who doesn't have the safety culture of the Defence Force to reach out and support them, I'm sitting here this afternoon trying to figure out where I can go to find out more information, while our Prime Minister and our Minister for Defence and Minister for Veterans Affairs are saying that there are support systems in place. Where are they? What are they doing? And why are they not reaching out to the few hundred people that are involved in this inquiry before the Australian public is taking along this PR journey?
Can I just clarify that? So 2 days ago, you were told the investigation was over, and that would mean no more questioning, nothing more in terms of the actual investigation, findings to come. That was your understanding, and now there's this next process.
Yeah, I simply received a letter that was not as specific as you saying. It was just vague enough to say that the IGADF, the Inspector General of the Defence Force inquiry, was over. And however, I was still bound to not disclose any information of that inquiry with no further information.
Right. So you thought, well, that's interesting, like nothing else can still be spoken of. Then this comes and you say, right, this is why this is happening, this next phase, which did take you by surprise today.
Yeah, I was literally sitting there thinking that we were awaiting the report to be released from the Chief of the Defence Force, as he was passed it from General Brereton last Friday. And now we're being told that there's going to be an independent investigator, which is fantastic, to look to get into the context of the situation, not just the individual incidents. But as we all know, that might take, it's going to be appointed by next year, hopefully sooner, to quote the Prime Minister. And we all know, in order to really understand the very complicated and complex circumstances of these incidents, it's going to take a long time as well. So 4.5 years, the veteran suicide rate is already at its critically highest period since in modern recorded history. And then the veteran community and those involved with such a critical incident that's being dragged before the Australian public for the first time in the Special Forces history are still left to try and figure out where they stand and what is next within this uncertainty.
So the difficulty is, I suppose, nothing about what you're saying is, let's do a really quick investigation. You say this is complicated, this will take a while, but we're looking at a process now that is probably 6 years in total, if we add 18 months to now, that you're saying surely there's a shorter way to do that, to remove uncertainty for those involved.
I wouldn't dare say that there's a shorter way to do it. This has to be done in the full depth and accuracy that is needed. But what I'm currently seeing is unemotionally intelligent decisions being made. I'm seeing collateral damage, fratricide, friendly fire, the mental and emotional health of our veterans and service members being exposed to that friendly fire and used as collateral damage or just failed to being considered while these statements are being made for public opinion and to sate the public knowledge of this investigation, as opposed to those who are actually involved in it. What we're failing to see is our senior leadership step forward and talk about the dozens of other missions and theatres of war and recovery operations that Australian Special Forces have done over the last 10 years and especially since 2016. You know, when I was in Afghanistan in 2012, I was 1/4 of the commando capability over there. The other 3/4 were doing operations elsewhere. None of this is being demonstrated. It feels like we're being hung out to dry. I'm so happy that a deliberate process is underway, but we need to be more emotionally intelligent with the impacts, the second and third order effects, the collateral damage this is having on our veteran and current serving community mental and emotional health.
And you're talking about, I guess, the broad context of how isolated this is, even the investigation compared to the rest of the operations. There's also, I suppose, a context, and I'm not preemptively dismissing anything here, but some of the incidents that might happen in this theatre of war that Australians such as myself probably have no real concept of.
Well, that's it. I mean, look, I'd love to dive into it. We saw some details on, the four corners where we saw individual soldiers conducting actions, whereas the Australian public doesn't know that, we were over there on operations whereby we could have literally dropped bombs on terrorist insurgents. However, we had a much lower threshold for accepting collateral damage and therefore sent in Special Forces soldiers to conduct those kill capture missions. Everything's just been blown out of context here. And at the same time, it's being caught up within these conversations around the culture within defence, of which needs to be seen, the culture within Special Forces, which needs to be seen as a completely separate issue that has actually been under review within the Defence Force, within the Army, and within the Special Operations for the last 8 years, with huge changes that have already been made. But the way it's being demonstrated in the public opinion, in the media, is that we're all waiting for this inquiry to take action. Yesterday I caught up with a bunch of my former colleagues from Special Forces, and even after just leaving the start of last year, I'm already irrelevant to comment on the current culture, on the current organisational structure, on the current operations, because so much has already changed from cultural reviews, courses, ethics inquiries, all these other physical changes to even unit structures that aren't being communicated by our senior leadership, that are being made because Defence and the Special Forces is proactive to do so. But all that the public opinion is seeing is this negativity in the media.
Well, we'll see what comes of next week, and of course I think it's a good urging for everyone just to let this run its course before judgment, but understand that what you mentioned there, with obviously a lot of limbo right now. Heston Russell, appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Pleasure, thanks so much.